I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, as I'm doing it live, you already know that the Supreme Court now has a new member. The Senate has voted to put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court with effectively 1 week and a tiny bit of change before the election. They voted to confirm her after 60 million plus Americans had already voted in the presidential election. You know, further proving that all of their talk about wanting the people to be able to weigh in before someone is put on the Supreme Court is even more absolute horseshit than we knew it was back in 2016. It seems sort of pointless to point out the hypocrisy because it was obvious at the time. It's only become more obvious every day since then. The whole thing is absolute bullshit, but it's bullshit that we now live in. So we need to talk a little bit about some of the consequences of this, what we're going to do, what you perhaps can do, and all of that. But let's start off with the Democrats. So the Democrats shockingly failed to stop this. Now, admittedly, the chance of actually stopping it was very low. It was very low, even if they did all of what they should have done, which we've been talking about for some time, and it seemed unfathomable that they would actually do any of it, let alone all of it, and so what do you know that they failed. It's particularly frustrating in this sort of way, in this particular situation, because, hey, Ty Johnson, because they failed in a way that is going to hurt us for literally decades. Amy Coney Barrett is going to be on that court forever, effectively. I mean, honestly, like, I don't know if someday on whatever platform replaces the platform that replaces the platform that replaces YouTube, I'm going to be covering it. I don't know. I might have retired, actually, a long time in the future, literally decades in the future, before she actually leaves. She is now going to be a factor of our political lives for effectively the rest of our lives, unless you are an oddly young person to be watching my video. And I know there's a few. Welcome to the oddly young. Hey, Mr. Riley, how's it going? So she's going to be there for a very long time. And that doesn't mean that the damage that she's going to do can't be mitigated in some ways. And it doesn't mean that it can't be even worse. We do have to worry about both of those things. So we were talking earlier today on the Damage Report with Francesca Fiorentini about some of the stakes in this election. This is Stakes Week on the Damage Report, and we pointed out one of the things, so we did a top 10 list, and one of mine was the Supreme Court. And I made the point that the reason that that is at stake in this election is not that I have some sort of insane unicorn dream that we get Biden and then, hey, it's not so bad that Amy Coney Barrett was on the court. It's not so bad that Kavanaugh and Gorsuch are on the court. No, all that damage is locked in. The 2016 presidential election was every bit as important as we warned it would be, if not far more. That damage is there. What is at stake in terms of the Supreme Court is theoretically an even worse Supreme Court. So, you know, like hypothetically, some of the most conservative members of the court are fairly old, and there's a good chance that if Donald Trump gets 4 more years, they might decide to retire either on time or slightly prematurely to make sure that they lock in those positions as well for literally decades. We don't know for sure. And the thing is, honestly, if Biden gets in, it's not like, oh, then we can finally reflip those seats. That's probably not going to happen. It's probably a long time in the future. But it at least stops some further damage, Supreme Court. Okay, we had some sort of issue there. It looks like we're back. Chat if you can still hear me. By the way, if you could like the video, let more people know that we're live, they can get involved in the conversation. Okay, so the Dems screwed up. We sort of knew that they were going to. Here's the thing. I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler alert on what the solution to all of this is. Thankfully, it's actually very similar to the solution to a lot of our problems, which is get them the hell out of there and replace them with actual fighters. Strong, progressive fighters who are not beholden to anyone other than their voters, that actually pursue their values in policy and will fight to make that happen. We don't have that right now. Hoot, USMC, they're Warby Parkers. I don't remember the actual type or whatever. I think they were like $100. They have like a white line on the side. I think they're the only one that does that. So no, we need to get rid of all of them, because the thing is, like, turning to the future, the question is, okay, so we've been talking about the need to reform the court and possibly expand the court if they do this, which they did. And so the question is that going to happen? And the thing is, I think inevitably it is going to happen, because we have to have a court that is at least in some way reflective of the country. And the country is increasingly liberal. They vote for the liberal presidential candidate literally every time. The Republicans have won one popular vote in literally decades, and yet they have the vast majority of the seats on the Supreme Court. That simply can't stand. You can't have a democracy that is not in any way reflective of the will of the people. And the current formulation of the Supreme Court is not locked in stone. It's not locked in the Constitution. We've just sort of decided, we'll have 9. That's not in there. We can have a different number if we want to. Ted Cruz is perfectly happy to limit the number down to 8. And by the way, if Biden gets in and the Republicans maintain control of the Senate and a seat does open up, they're not going to give it to him. Doesn't matter if it's a day before the election, 2 years before the election, they're not going to give it to him. So we need to fight as hard and as ruthlessly as they will, because they have been and they will continue to. But the thing is, right now, we have a number of people who aren't going to. Dianne Feinstein is not going to fight. She still thinks that Lindsey Graham is some sort of nice guy. Like that, he, theoretically, we disagree in a few things, but, I really think that we both love America and we can work together. No, that's not the way it is. And she's not going to learn that. She's been there for literally decades. All of her worst excesses, the ideological flaws, those are locked in. They're never going to change. Okay, so I'm just going to, let's just get rid of that idiot. There we go. Should have made it better with the 1 or 2 messages you'd get before I mute you. So we need to replace her. We tried to the last time. We need to do it the next time. That's it. And not just her. Chuck Schumer, I personally think that in, a few years, it's time for AOC to think about running for president. But if along the way she decides that instead she should go for the Senate, I think that that's a good idea. Because, again, they're not fighters. And they're simply standing in the way of fighters. So get rid of all of them. Now, in terms of what effect she's going to have in the near term, it's probably going to be pretty devastating. I'm not going to lie to you. She's being put on that court to help Trump win the election. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking about Kavanaugh's ruling from earlier today that implies that he's perfectly willing to literally stop counting the vote if the vote looks like it's going to turn against Donald Trump. So she's joining him there in that. That's one of the things that she's there for. Blue Lips brings up the next point, which is destruction of the ACA. They're going to get rid of it. They're not going to replace it. They're not. They'll do some sham executive order or something like that doesn't actually provide insurance. Okay, so I'm going to do this video until my phone dies because I've only got about 9% left. I don't know how long that'll last. Pixel 2 XL, do your best. Yeah, they're going to get rid of it, and I know that some people might think, well, they're not going to do that. Come on, we're in the middle of a pandemic. They're not going to throw tens of millions of people off their health insurance. Yeah, they 100% will. Like, do people forget that in the debate that led to the ACA, the Republicans were perfectly fine doing nothing? Like, do you remember what it was like before that? The ACA is terrible, admittedly, but the situation before that was apocalyptic. Watch Sicko, honestly. They would have been, if the ACA had been, like, blocked at the last moment or something like that, there would likely still be nothing. There would still be tens of millions of additional Americans that don't have health insurance. They are perfectly happy with that. They don't care. And so they're fine with it being struck down. There's not going to be any sort of replacement. It's not going to be some sort of big, beautiful healthcare plan, fully developed, ready to deploy. It isn't. It doesn't exist because they don't care. It's as simple as that. But as Emma Vigeland was tweeting about earlier today, that actually sort of provides an opportunity. Because right now, Biden is running on, I'm going to expand the ACA, I'm going to strengthen the ACA. Okay, so how is that going to be any better protected from Amy Coney Barrett knocking it down than the ACA is? It's not. It's not. Now, the corollary to that is, hypothetically, let's imagine some sort of hypothetical future where Biden supports Medicare for all. She would also knock that down. This is going to be a theme, by the way, of the future. Imagine a progressive piece of legislation. they will knock it down with their supermajority in the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter whatever the precedent is, doesn't matter what bullshit argument they have to come up with, they will knock it down. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that I was telling people in 2016, you don't hand over the presidency to fascists, because then they put justices like this, and you effectively kneecap every progressive going forward, unless, of course, you reform the Supreme Court and expand it. Yeah, there's nothing I love more than fake masculinity from weak, pathetic, ignorant jackasses that follow Donald Trump of all people and believe that they care about alpha males. You follow literally the weakest man in American history, so keep your soy boy shit to yourself. Nobody's interested. But anyway, that means, hypothetically, that debates about expanding the ACA, what's the point of that? Okay, maybe it could pass, and maybe it could go into effect before they strike it down, but probably not. So we might as well dispense with those conversations and talk about the conversation that has to happen before all other conversations, which is reforming the court, expanding the court. That's it. Without that, you get nothing. And I really mean that. You get nothing, progressives get nothing, and by the way, any of you red hat wearers, you get nothing. I know that you have no expectations for government. You've been trained by right-wing media and conservative politicians to expect that the only thing that government should ever give you is making libs cry. But the thing is, many of you are just as poor as the rest of us. Many of you don't have health insurance just like the rest of us. Many of you could really use an education like the rest of our kids. And that requires legislation, and they're not going to give it to you. Mitch McConnell has no interest in any of that. If he maintains control of the Senate, you can anticipate a very sleepy, very inactive Senate for the next few years. The only difference would be that, hypothetically, if Donald Trump maintains control of the presidency, then, you know, in theory, they would spend just as much time confirming conservative justices and judges and all that. So you have to reform the court, you have to expand the court. That's basically it. That's basically it. It's really as simple as that. That is one of the stakes in the election, and it's not that Biden is interested in doing any of that. That goes against virtually every one of his political predispositions, both ideologically, but also in terms of his Dianne Feinstein-esque belief that there are still good Republicans somewhere against all of the evidence, which means that we're going to have to fight him on that. But the opportunity is that, at least with him, hypothetically, he can be fought, he can be pushed. Donald Trump is not going to give ground on judges. He's just not going to. So we have that opportunity, but then it falls to us. That is what we're going to have to be doing. So, hypothetically, if Tuesday goes the way the polls indicate that it's going to, if Tuesday goes the way I hope that it will go, we get Biden and we get a new fight. The fight doesn't go away. It, in fact, probably has to become more intense because now at least there's an opportunity for it to work. We were just resisting before. No, now we're going to be the aggressors against at least someone in the White House that hypothetically can be pushed. So, you know, rest up for this week and in the months between Donald Trump losing and Biden being sworn in, you know, stock up on sleep or whatever, because we've got a lot of work to do as soon as that inauguration happens. To fix the situation for ourselves and also for the jackass red hats that don't understand that government is actually supposed to do something for the people. And by the way, one small thing, I know a lot of people really angry at the fact that this is such a middle finger to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They don't care at all. She did, you know, a lifetime of good work, and they're spitting in her face to replace her with some ideological jackass a minute before the election. So let's just remember that as we're fighting. You know, when you know, bills to expand the Supreme Court and reform them are going forward, let's do it in her name. You know. Bluebird on my shoulder says, you're supposed to say hold on to your butts, John. Yeah, hold on to your butts. It's going to be an exciting 4 years with a lot on the line, but a lot of opportunities as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. It's not the only stakes. We're going to be breaking down others as we go on in Stakes Week. And let me just say this. So J.R. Jackson is going to be on the show tomorrow. We're going to be talking about a lot, including that stuff about Kavanaugh that's just, you know, so goddamn corrupt and transparent and ideological and partisan, which supposedly the Supreme Court isn't. They're just robots. I see some people typing vote. Yeah, you better vote. You better go vote. But if you're a conservative, don't vote by mail. You probably can't trust it. It's probably a waste of time. Seriously, the willingness of them to be deceived. Anyway, but Wednesday is the show that you can't miss. So Wednesday, the Damage Report, Nikki is asking about it right now. I'm not going to tell you what it is, and I'm not going to imply that it is a 100% happy surprise, but I am going to say that it's not a show that you're going to want to miss. So definitely tune in to the live show, not just the clips, the live show of the Damage Report on Wednesday. It's going to be an important one in a way. I will say that. Anyway, you know, hopefully this was at least a little bit helpful. I know a lot of people are probably pretty frustrated with the current state of what passes for an advanced democracy in America and what passes for an opposition party in that sham democracy. So just wanted to do a little bit of a video. Anyway, thank you to everybody who tuned in. Really do appreciate it. Tomorrow, Wednesday, it is 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And tomorrow, Jared Jackson, I'll see you then.